Welcome back to the all-new DS7 Crossback, the first all-new DS in the company's recent history. And I will start by saying that the last time I drove this car, I came away feeling a little underwhelmed. It's a step in the right direction, but the suspension just lacked control. And for a car that's all about luxury and comfort, that was a bit of a disappointment. But now, not only am I in a car with a new, more powerful engine, but it has different, much simpler suspension, and it could be all the better for it. Now, of course, make sure you do all the normal YouTube things. Make sure you like this video, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe, make sure you visit newmotoring.com, and make sure you click on the little bell icon next to our channel name, because then every time we upload a new video, you'll get a notification. Now, the car I drove before was a DS7 Crossback Ultra Prestige, and it had a system called Active Scan Suspension, and what it did was use a camera to scan the road surface ahead and then adjust the suspension accordingly. In theory, it was supposed to make the ride more comfortable. The idea was a good one, but in practice I thought it was just too soft for UK roads and the wheels weren't controlled enough. It took too long for the car to settle down after you'd hit a bump, and there was just too much body movement. This car is a DS7 Crossback performance line, and it doesn't have the Active Scan suspension. Has it made a difference? Yes, I think it has, and to be honest, I think it's better. Where the Ultra Prestige felt bouncy, this feels much more controlled and much better suited to UK roads. It still isn't perfect, but it is better. This car, as well, as I said at the beginning, it's got a new engine. It's got a 1.6 litre turbo 4-cylinder, and it's got 225 brake horsepower and 222 pounds-feet of torque, which makes it, for the time being, the most powerful engine in the range. That is until a hybrid comes along in 2019 that will have about 300 horsepower. 0 to 62 miles an hour takes 8.3 seconds, and the top speed is 141 miles an hour. I think that's pretty respectable. This engine really suits this car. Diesel is great for economy, but that extra performance, the extra power, and the sound and the feel of a petrol engine just fits. The steering is still quite light, and there's still very little information coming actually through the wheel. But because the suspension is that little bit better, the steering and the way this car handles also just feels better. It feels more composed. The gearbox is an 8-speed automatic. It's the same gearbox I've driven before, and it's smooth and changes gear quite quickly. It doesn't always respond brilliantly to small throttle inputs, particularly when you're at lower speeds. And also, I think these paddles behind the steering wheel, there's just no real satisfaction in using them, in the sense that there's no click or kind of weight to them. They just feel like you're pressing something a bit spongy. But as gearboxes go, this gearbox, it is smooth, and I do think it's quite a good one. The car has 3 modes. There's a button down here on the centre console that's got Eco and Sport, and then in between those two you've got Normal. Eco, well, as the name suggests, it's for driving economically. So if you're driving on the motorway 60-70 miles an hour, it numbs out the throttle response. However, because it numbs out the throttle response, the second you get to a hill or you want to overtake someone, the throttle is too slow to wake up. So for that reason, I'm inclined just to keep it in normal mode and just be careful with how my foot is moving. If you press Sport, you get synthesized engine noise pumped into the cabin. The throttle response is sharper as well. The gearbox keeps you in a lower gear than it normally would, and the steering becomes heavier as well. If I'm honest though, the steering is too heavy. It feels too artificial. Inside and out, I'm quite fond of this. Inside, because this is a performance line, the seats, the dashboard, the center console, everything is covered in this lovely kind of suede. And all of the dials and the switch gear and the stop-start button, they're all unique to DS. The only thing that you can see has carried over from the Peugeot 3008 are the paddles behind the steering wheel, the indicator stalks, the cruise control, and the gear lever. There probably are a few other things as well, but for the most part it feels quite unique. Outside, I think it looks good. The lights are really interesting as well, particularly the front ones, because whenever you turn the car on, they basically do a little dance. And what's nice is that there aren't that many of these on the road yet, so people do notice it, people do stop and look, people are curious. Which reminds me, one of the reasons why I've got this car is because I drove it down to Le Mans. It took 3 of us, it took all of our camping gear for a 4-day trip down to the race. And I noticed a few things. Firstly, people in France, young and old, really noticed this thing. We could hear people as we pulled into the campsite saying, "Oh, DS7 Crossback." You could actually hear it with the windows open, and people visibly were turning around and looking at it. And even when we were just sitting outside our tent in the evening, people would walk up to the car and start looking in through the window. They were clearly interested. Either that or they just wanted to steal what was inside the car. But I'm going to hope it was the former. Secondly, it hasn't used as much fuel as I thought it would either. We've done 1,257 miles in this car. About 800 of those were done at 130 kilometres, steaming down the French motorway. And overall, we've averaged 36.6 mpg. The claimed combined figure is 47.9. And yeah, it's a way off of that. But actually, considering we weren't driving for economy, we really weren't driving for economy, I think it's done quite well. It definitely hasn't used as much fuel as I thought it would do. It's got 225 brake horsepower. I thought we would have just emptied a tank after like 200 miles. It seemed appropriate to take a car like this, built for comfort, and a French car at that, down to Le Mans. I think it was a really good decision. It's covered in about 1 billion flies, but I think it was a good companion. What to make of this car then? Well, for me it feels closer to the DS7 Crossback I was hoping for at first. The suspension feels that little bit more controlled, and the engine just really suits the character of the car. It's better value too. An Ultra Prestige is £43,000, but a performance line, you can get one for £31,000, and with this engine, it's £34,990. Given how underwhelmed perhaps I was before, I've enjoyed this a lot more. What do you think of the DS7 Crossback? Would you buy one? What do you make of this new engine? What car would you have driven down to Le Mans? Let me know in the comments below.